you are, and Tanisha, right? You guys are going to be. All right, before we move into today's material, any new questions or issues come up with respect to content or process, working with the committee, format, ways of working, any of that? You all are progressing then, I'll assume. Okay, I briefly mentioned last time that Andrew and I have put into place a progress report, which I've mentioned from time to time during the semester. And now I want to push into the details of that, because the dates are set and spaces are set. We've avoided a midterm one just because I think at that point in the progress of the semester, obviously you'd have less to talk about, and I think it would be more of an interruption in the middle than at the end. And it's probably still going to be somewhat of an interruption because you're going to have to turn to produce some things at this interim point in time. But what I'm hoping is that there'll be products that are useful, you know, in the normal flow of the thesis and not just a total side trip. And also, as is normal in most ways of working in architecture and other fields too, is you've got something to push against now. You know you're going to have an accounting of sorts at these dates. And so knowing that, you know, you may push here and there to get some pieces of your thesis done in order to get reporting. So what I want to do today is get into the dates, the spaces. There are two components, as you'll see, a display and a PowerPoint, and just kind of get clear what the feel of each of those is. And then, as before, I'm going to speak in some terms about ideas for each component of the progress report, but as is true for all of our sessions in here, you decide how you package this. So in the same way that we're not trying to get this course, get you all to converge to similar thesis formats and strategies, the way you wind up reporting your progress is really up to you. So I'm going to let me grab my calendar here. It's going to be easier to put this on the board rather than talking. Let me get it clear. As I mentioned before, we push this as deep into the term as we can to make it an end of semester progress report. But it's still happening and beginning in mid-November, just because of the fact that the last week of class, which is jury week, comes right after Thanksgiving break. So there's only 1 week after Thanksgiving, which is the week of December 2nd. The last day of class is December 6th. And so we know we can't do any of this during jury week. There's just too much turbulence and other stuff going on. That means it gets backed up against Thanksgiving, so it's on the other side of Thanksgiving. So if we put a couple of weeks up here, with this Wednesday being the 13th of November, this is in November, and then the 15th, let me go down to the 18th, 20th, 22nd, and we're down here at the 25th and 27th. This is the Thursday of Thanksgiving here. So the two components are going to be a display, which is hard copy, models, whatever it is. It's a physical display in South Atrium. And the other one's a PowerPoint. And that's in the faculty conference room over here, with the big donut tables. There's a PowerPoint projector, this has been reserved, and that's been reserved also. So what the idea is, from 13th through at least the 20th, and it can coast past the 20th, is the display. So you should plan on this being in place, put it up on Tuesday or even on Monday, so that it's in place on Wednesday. All this stuff's going to get published to the whole faculty, so they can tap into as much of it as they want. The idea is that down here we have, I'll put circles around the days where the PowerPoint is happening. Because we have 9 people in the class, we need 5 days. One day, which will be this last day, there'll just be one person doing the PowerPoint. But there'll be 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 there. It'll be during class time. So it's 12:20 to 1:10. And the format will be, for the PowerPoints, will be similar to this. You'll each have 25 minutes. My recommendation is you spend about half that or even 10 minutes of that giving a brief overview of your thesis. So it's not a big long spiel. You don't have time to really be long-winded about it because you want to leave some time for questions and discussions and suggestions. So each of you will have 25 minutes in each of these classes. We'll draw lots later on to decide who goes when. And so I don't think we need to address that now. I just want to make sure you're clear what the nature of the event is. So the display is going to be up at least a week. And the idea is the display goes up a little earlier than the presentation so that people will have a chance to go down there and mill around. And by milling around and looking at what you have on the wall or on the display panels in the South Atrium, they may decide which of these things they sit in on. Plus, the other thing is that the display gives you a chance to put up way more information than you're going to have time to talk about here. So your display, I would think of, obviously you're not going to be there to explain things, and so the more self-explanatory it is, the better. We'll talk about the content of these 2 things in a minute. But the display in the South Atrium needs to stand on its own. You're not going to be standing next to it to answer questions. It's not that you might not take a faculty down there and tour them through it, but that's going to be on your own. What's happening officially is the display just goes up and it sits there. Whatever else happens is up to the faculty and up to you guys, but that's all individually determined. There's not going to be any, you're not going to be down there doing any formal stuff at all, except for having put it up. And so, as before, when thesis work went up in the atrium, you'll probably have 2 panels. There'll be a lot of room there to put up what you want to put up. So as I say, we'll talk about the kinds of things that might want to go up there. It's not hard to figure out what they are because they're going to be products of the thesis. So that's the big picture. The PowerPoints are this week and half of this week. The display is this week. I'm not sure anything's going on in the atrium here, but I didn't book the atrium for these days. So if something's happening in the atrium here, we'll probably be taking down here somewhere so that we can make that space available to whoever needs it. So that's the logistics. As I say, the assignment of the days will wait until we draw lots. And I'll do that soon so you have some feel for when you're going to go. After we draw lots, I'm okay with a little bit of fluidity in negotiating and trading, but at one point, at some point, I've got to say we have to freeze it because it's going to get published to the faculty. And so they're going to know that so-and-so with this thesis title goes on this day at this time. And if we keep keep that fluid, they're gonna show up and not find the presentation they expected to find. So we can't keep dancing around forever with this once we draw our lots. I think that's it strategy-wise, organization-wise. Any of this generate questions for you guys?
Which faculty conference room is it?
Say again?
Which faculty conference room?
It's the one where the faculty meetings happen, right next to the dean's office, the one with a great big square donut table.
Okay.
The reason why we're gonna be there is just, it's got AB, it's a bigger room, it's still sort of a conversational seating thing. It'll hold more people. It's just gonna be better than here. This will just get filled up, and we don't wanna do it in a setting like the auditorium where it's more of an audience and a speaker. We want it to be more conversational around something like, we're trying to do it. So that may be the space.
How finalized will the display and the PowerPoint be?
Finalized? As final as you can make it.
That's not like a lot of work, like a lot of stuff to.
Well, they know it's not going to be your completed thesis. We're calling it a progress report, not a final report. But it stands to reason the more you have done, the better. And essentially, it's at the end of the semester. If you still have a ton of undone stuff and you're going to finish the fall with huge blanks in your thesis, then you're in a bigger kind of trouble than this. So, what's your question?
I'm not worried about the PowerPoint because basically you'll be there explaining it, but it's about the filling up in the atrium since you're not going to be there to say,
right.
What is this all?
Well, did you guys get to see the pinup of the thesis work last year?
Yes.
Yeah. It was really kind of a potpourri of things.
Yeah.
They showed their...
Most of it was like a lot of personal just hand sketches and models.
Yeah, it was processed to that point. Some of them had chapters and they pinned them up. Some of them had the grid where they had done some sort of a matrix analysis. Some of them had their precedent studies there. I would say one thing for sure, the more complete it is, the better. There's no reason to hold back, in other words. You want to put up everything you've got that's complete, and also even that's in process that's got any understandable product or preliminary product or tentative product involved that's been finalized. And you know what those pieces are. You've all pretty much got your heads around your table of contents, and so both of these things are going to be largely driven by your table of contents. So let's just talk about each one of these things. You asked about the display. I think it would be nice to have the title of your thesis there. So if you don't do anything else, having some large type, large font with the title of your thesis and your name and your chair and all that, some sort of an introductory sheet pinned up. That's not going to take you long to knock out on a computer, so that people aren't just walking up to a wall of confetti and they don't know who it is, what they're doing, what the title is. So something up front, I think, is important to introduce people and transition them into what they're about to look at. I don't think it has to touch on every table of contents piece, but I will say that the general sequencing and order of what's on the wall probably ought to generally follow the order of things in your table of contents. I wouldn't just throw things up there or confuse people by reversing things where you're presenting stuff that's going to generally happen at the end of the thesis first, and so the flow of it, the sequence ought to be the way the sequence is flowing in your table of contents. And if for some reason there's something that hasn't been addressed yet, then there's just a blank there. And then from there, you can take off and be as organized and as special with this as you want. It could be, for example, that as you're typing up the large font title sheet with the title of the thesis and your name and your committee, you also knock out some large font sheets that show the content type under which you're putting your pieces. So there might be one that says application, and you've got site stuff and space lists and bubble diagrams or hard T diagrams down there. You might have one called research and analysis. You might have one called precedent study. You might have one called literature review. So that you have some little pinned up sheets that label the body of information that's happening in that zone on the board. And that way it's not just a smear. You know, you're not just putting a smear of stuff up. You want it to be accessible. You want somebody to be able to fathom what they're looking at. So some sort of a titling system that you put up there. So while you're on the computer, maybe you do those titles and you print that out, and you know the titles are that big so that you can see how the information is deployed there with the titles above it. And then what's happening under that label, that's up to you. You know, how far are you along in that subject, and what do you want to put up there? If it were me, I would put anything and everything. If I've got a chapter done, say half my introduction, I might push pin that up there and just let it be a flat thing rather than, you know, trying to fill the wall by spreading all those pages out. So if you've got a chapter or a series of pieces of paper that really are part of a chapter or section, I would be inclined just to put them on top of one another and let somebody flip through it so they don't take up that much space. So to me, you know, the guidelines are pretty general for that. I'm not sure what else I can say about the South Atrium other than that. I think we're going to be flexible in terms of how much board space we have. If somebody can get it all done with one, you know, you don't have to fill two. If you need three, those things you can roll around. So I'm going to let you tailor that to your circumstances and to what it is you want to put on the wall. So let me stop there. Are those enough things said to be clear what the nature of that challenge is? Visualizing your own process. Does anything come up that isn't clear? Well, I will add that I think all of your map stuff should be there. Your title, your table of contents, your diagram, your abstract, your work plan. We've been hammering on that as a updated product to kind of be clear where we are and where we're going. So you should have that as a fairly easy set of products to put up. And if you want to be disclosing the evolution of your process, maybe you show a series of those submissions. You know, this was my map at this point, now here's my map. So if somebody wanted to understand or appreciate the morphing and evolution of your thesis as the maps have changed, you know, that would be maybe an interesting thing to put up. But I would at least have the map components that are alive and in play at the point you put your display up. And frankly, that might be another updating point where you haven't updated your title, your table of contents, your diagram, your abstract, your work plan for a while. And so you update it again, so what goes up on the wall is the latest thinking. If you've got your bibliography typed up, you know, that would be another good example of pages that are stacked with a couple of push pins above them. So, what comes up for you guys? Thinking about your own particular situation and visualizing what the display is supposed to do? Anybody see glitches or questions or?
I'd like to have my design started to show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would be good to have some evidence of that. Even if, well, I'm not even gonna say that. We talked about what the pieces were up here for the application. You got the introduction, programmatic stuff, the conceptual work, and then the final scheme. It'd be really nice if you could have those things done at least through or into the conceptual component. Finalizing your scheme's probably asking too much, but concept can be taken pretty far, where even in the conceptual component of the application, you can be pretty resolved, but short of, you know, the full speed production of final drawings and all that. I'm trying to think of the other pieces that might raise questions like that. Yeah, site information, site analysis, site photos, all that. And, you know, you will have produced some images, probably special for the PowerPoint. Having those images up there so that if somebody didn't sit in on your PowerPoint, they could track your PowerPoint with printouts of the images that you have put on the screen in the conference room. So that's another piece that could be there. But you're in charge of what that is, and I want to emphasize too that now that this is set, and I'm about to alert the faculty that it's set, including the chairs, it's important you work with your chair to plan this, both the display and the oral in the conference room. So it's a progress report, but as I say, the more you've got done, the more thoroughly you report, the more clearly you indicate that you've got your head around this thing and you've got direction and traction and momentum, the better. Okay, let's talk about the PowerPoint. That's going to have to be much more compact because you have a limited number of minutes to get your messages across. And you can't afford to be long-winded with anything. So what you may want to do is augment what goes on the screen with some handouts. For example, if you want to have, say, a packet of things that you distribute with a title sheet with your title, your name, and your committee, and then maybe there's another sheet with your table of contents, maybe there's another sheet with your thesis diagram, maybe components of your map might be hard copy that you hand out, because you can't afford to go through your whole table of contents. That'll use up your whole minute budget. You won't have time for that. And to flash something on the wall that you can't address thoroughly, that's just going to be frustrating. Clearly, the first thing up there should be your title, your name, and your committee. Then to me, I would recommend one of your images on the screen should be your diagram, where you talk about the key thesis themes and how you're coming at the task of the research and analysis, what scientists would call the geometry of your inquiry. The diagram is going to be indicated. And then to the extent you can, push into your scholarship on your thesis themes, and to the extent you've thought about it and pushed into it, your work on the application. I loop back to what we said before on the board a few classes back. Those are the two main pressure points and points of your major contribution in authorship in the thesis. The way you push into and analyze and massage and work with your thesis themes, the way you've taken them apart, the way you've harvested them, or looked at how they come together, whatever that is, I would try to address the findings of that, the key findings so far. But even more important than that, how you're working. How are you coming at the analysis? What's your way of, your method of attack? And then, you know, you're going to do this kind of building on this site, and here's why this building and this site fits with, you know, the logic of the application. So knowing you've only got about 10 and at a maximum 15 minutes, maybe 12 minutes to talk, it's going to have to be abbreviated. And it will necessarily be overviewish. So it's going to be fragments and snippets. The pressure is which fragments and which snippets can be most telling, most instructive, most illustrative to generate discussion. And it's probably not a bad idea to close with, these are the major remaining areas of work that I have. And maybe sitting right beside that is, these are the major questions I'm encountering, which is a different kind of thing than remaining work. Remaining work is, you know how to do it and you haven't gotten it done yet, but you know what to do. Sticking points are things that are snags in the process, where you maybe even guide the nature of the commentary after your PowerPoint to specifically aim the faculty or whoever else is there to speak to this point. And I'm having trouble marrying this with that. I'm having trouble seeing how this issue can be manifested architecturally. Or I'm having trouble balancing the conventional wisdom of planning a site with the influence of the thesis theme, whatever those happen to be. Because it's a progress report, sharing tripping points in the process is not a bad thing to include. You don't have to sound like you've got it all wrapped up. You know, all the faculty know you don't have it wrapped up yet. But the more clearly you can present where you've come to, the more clearly and easily they'll track your logic and how you've arrived at where you are. And as the case so many times, I'm hoping that the challenge of getting ready for this is going to precipitate some clarities that maybe wouldn't have been precipitated before. You know, knowing you've got to explain it. Oftentimes, a designer will arrive at a clearer way of saying what they're doing in a more incisive way of explaining what they're about and what the nature of this is. It's not unusual, for example, in getting ready for the progress report, that you actually shift your thesis a degree or two. You know, you were saying it was this, but now the compression of getting ready for this stuff is causing you to see this in a clearer light, and now you think it's a better way to say your thesis interest by having the title tweaked this way or your diagram tweaked that way. And of course, I think all of this wants to be discussed with the chair as well. These wouldn't be things that you were unilaterally thinking about and deciding. And I'll be the timekeeper, because frequently, well, not even frequently, always what happens is the faculty will get interested in the first one, and it'll mortgage the time of the second one. So I'll be there to say we have to move to the next one. And so what I'm hoping will happen is maybe people who aren't even on your committee will say some interesting things. We'll go set up some appointments with them and have some conversations. Finish the discussion, you know, another time, one-on-one in the office. Because there probably won't be time to totally air out all the ideas that are there. The other thing that frequently happens is if we have any number of faculty there at all, they've got a time limit on their air time too. And so people may be there who didn't get a chance to say things. And I'm going to encourage the faculty to, as we're breaking up over there, if you've presented and they have some ideas, go over and tug your shirt and say, come by and see me, I've got some things to share, you know, so that you harvest every kind of reaction you can get from as many people there as possible. I don't know yet. Andrew assures me there are just one or two faculty for whom our time slot is a conflict. So I'm hoping that's not going to be a snag, major snag with some of the chairs. But it is possible that some people that really need to be there and you might want to have there won't be able to be there, and you'll have to do the slideshow on your own, you know, with them in here or wherever you're able to do that. But the progress reports is I mean, to me, that's not an unreasonable thing to ask. It's a tradition. The faculty in the school are interested in what's going on. We've held off the pressures to do it in the middle and the end. I think even though it's only a month away, a lot can happen. I'm hoping you're going to be increasing your momentum as you get clearer and clearer what your thesis is, so that there can be a lot of production and thinking and work and writing in that time frame. So I'm hoping that we'll all have a lot to put up and a lot to share when the time comes. So think about the PowerPoint for a second in relation to your own particular study. Any of this generate questions for you guys? You've done these kind of things before. You have a feel for images, text, titling. You want to make sure you don't have 50 images to be delivered in 10 minutes, you know, where you have to go so fast, people can't track you. Also, I would recommend you don't have images that have a whole lot of narrative, because nothing but bad things happen there. The first bad thing is you have to rush over it, they can't read it, and they wonder, why did he put that up there? Or worse, you slow down and read it, and you use 8 minutes of your 10 going through minutia or something. So you want to make sure that the images and what you have to say and how much is on the wall, how much is on the screen, fits with what you want to say, and also fits with the pace and the number of minutes you have. Later on, when you're giving longer winded reports and having more time, you can put a big matrix up there. You can put, you know, things up there that slow you down to explain them, but this is not one of those times. And keep in mind too, you have available to you the opportunity to augment what's on the screen with handouts. That could be where you've got a more complicated thing, where they can sit and kind of gaze at it at their own pace, and they're not subject to the pace that you're setting with the image cadence on the screen. So that's in the works. What remains for us is to draw lots to decide who goes where, which I'll do in another week or so. It's just going to be drawing numbers, and the numbers, like before, will be the order of choice, not the order of presentation. So number one will get to pick when they go. It'll be the same process as when we set the presentations in here. And then I'll give you guys a day or two to negotiate, because it stands to reason some of you are going to be more comfortable and further along than others. And if somebody who is less further along drew a lot that put them on the first day, and you'd rather have more days to get ready, well, if you can talk the other person into switching, that's going to be okay. But I'm not going to let that happen more than a couple of days. So once you know when you're going and you don't like it, make your move, make it quick. And you know, you may get aced out. You may not be able to talk anybody into change. I'll give you a chance to do that if you want to do that. There may be a way to charge people to sell your slot, make a few extra bucks.
Throwing Snickers.
in mind.
Okay, so rather than use the few minutes remaining to push into design, which is what we're going to move into next, I'm going to move into other aspects of the application, what's going on in the design process there, and then move into maybe some more theoretical issues around design in the next couple of classes, but I don't think today's a good day to start that. So we'll go ahead and knock off today and pick that up on